All right, welcome. We're going to do something a little different today. We're going to untangle all that confusing business speak. You know, the stuff you hear all the time. And the best way to do that is by telling a story. We're going to follow one entrepreneur's journey, right from that first light bulb moment all the way to the huge, complex world of the global market. So let's jump right in. I mean, think about it. You've heard these words a million times, right? Inflation, supply, futures, profit. They get tossed around on the news, in meetings, everywhere. And it's easy to think they're just random jargon. But here's the thing. They're not. They're all connected. They're all threads in the exact same story. The story of how business actually works.
First up, the entrepreneur's blueprint. You know, every big company, every major brand, it didn't start with a fancy spreadsheet or a board of directors. Nope. It started with an idea. And, just as important, a person who was willing to bet on it. So, let's meet our hero for this story. We'll just call her the entrepreneur. And she's got this great idea. She's going to start a business making and selling high-quality aluminum parts. Now think about that. She's putting her own time, her own money, all her energy on the line. And she's doing it all for one big reason.
The goal, obviously, is success. But what does success even mean when we're talking business? It's not just, a warm, fuzzy feeling. It's something concrete, something you can actually measure. It has a very specific and very important name.
And that name? It's profit. You got to think of profit as the fuel for the entire business. It's the whole point. It's the reward for taking that big risk. It's the market telling you, hey, you're making something people want. And crucially, it's the cash you need to grow, to hire people, to make better stuff. Without profit, that engine just stops. Game over.
And at its core, the math is super simple. Look at this. You've got your money in, that's revenue, all the cash from selling your parts. Then you've got your money out, that's your cost. Stuff like materials, rent, paying your people. And the magic number, what's left over after you subtract the costs from the revenue, that's your profit. That's the goal. Simple as that.
All right, next section. From cost to profit. So let's leave the blueprint behind and head down to the factory floor to see how this actually happens.
You know, running a business is really just a giant balancing act. It all boils down to two things. On one side, you have your costs, everything you have to spend to make your product. On the other, you have your revenue, all the money you bring in from selling it. And the entrepreneur's entire job, their entire job, is to wrestle with these two forces, keep those costs down, and push that revenue up.
And it all begins with production. This is the nuts and bolts of it. It's the physical act of taking raw materials, in her case aluminum, and using machines and know-how and people's time to turn it into something valuable that customers will actually pay for. This is where all those costs start piling up.
Okay, moving on. Part 3, navigating the marketplace. So the parts are made. They look great, but, they don't make any money just sitting in a warehouse. Our entrepreneur has to get out there and actually sell them.
Now, when we say the market, don't picture some old-timey town square. It's not a physical place anymore. The market could be a website, a complex global supply chain. It could even just be a phone call. It's any system, literally anywhere, that connects our entrepreneur with potential buyers.
And what's so cool about the market is that it's run by these two powerful, invisible forces, supply and demand. Demand is basically how many people out there want to buy our parts. And supply is how many parts are actually available to be sold, not just from her, but from her competitors, too. And where these two forces meet, this constant dance between supply and demand, that's what sets the price. It's really cool. So if, say, a bunch of car companies suddenly need way more parts than are available, bam, demand is high, supply is low, and the price goes way up. But if our entrepreneur gets ahead of herself and makes a ton of parts that nobody wants, well, supply is high, demand is low, and the price crashes. It's that simple, and at the same time, that incredibly complex.
Okay, on to our next section, the world of trade. Our entrepreneur is doing well. So well, in fact, that she's starting to look at a world map and not see countries and borders, but customers and opportunities. It's time to go global.
This is where trade comes in. We're talking international scale. It's what lets her sell her parts to a customer in, say, Germany or Japan or Brazil. And this just blows the doors wide open to a huge new world of customers. But of course, it also comes with a whole new set of headaches and challenges. So, to make this work, she might actually import super high-quality aluminum from a country that's really good at producing it. Then she makes her parts and exports those finished goods all over the globe. It's this constant worldwide flow of stuff.
But here's the catch. Going global is crazy expensive.
Building new factories, shipping things everywhere, that takes a ton of cash. Way more than she has just lying around. So to get that kind of funding, she needs to step into a totally different kind of market, the world of finance.
And how does she raise that money? Well, a common way is to sell stock in her company. What she's doing is basically selling off tiny, tiny little slices of ownership. The people who buy those slices, they're called shareholders. And now, they're technically part owners of her business.
Now, for those shareholders, what they're doing is making an investment. They're giving our entrepreneur their money right now because they're betting on her. They believe her business will be even more profitable down the road, which means their little slice of the company, their stock, is going to be worth a lot more.
So where does all this buying and selling happen? Well, it happens on a very specific type of market called an exchange. You've heard of them, like the New York Stock Exchange, where company stocks are traded. There are even exchanges for physical stuff, like the London Metal Exchange, where the price of the very aluminum she uses is set every single day. And on these exchanges, there are some really clever tools she can use. For instance, to deal with risk, she could buy something called a futures contract. This lets her lock in the price she'll pay for aluminum next year, so there are no surprises. But a lot of people on the exchange are doing the exact opposite. They're not avoiding risk, they're diving headfirst into it, through speculation, which is really just a fancy word for betting on which way prices are going to go.
Okay, let's zoom out one last time for our final section, the bigger economic picture. Because her factory, her business, it doesn't exist in a bubble. It's a small part of a huge interconnected global system.
See, her business is swimming in the giant ocean of the economy. If the whole economy is doing great, people have money, they buy more cars, and boom, she sells more parts. But if the economy hits a recession, her sales can dry up fast. And then you've got this other monster, inflation. That's when the price of everything, her raw aluminum, the electricity for her factory, everything starts to climb. Her costs go up, and that puts a really dangerous squeeze on her profit.
Which kind of brings us to our final question, right? In a world that's always changing, with all these forces at play, how does anyone actually plan for success? Well, we've gone on a huge journey here, from one person's simple idea all the way to global trade and inflation. And I think the big takeaway is this. All these words, all these concepts, they're connected. They're all part of the same story. And really getting what they mean and how they all fit together, that's the absolute first step for anyone who wants to make their way in the crazy, challenging, but honestly super fascinating world of business.